welcome to Strength-Based Marketing. I'm Pat Dewar. I have an excellent guest today, and it's something that I found that is so critical in today's workplace, and that is not just the functions of HR, but it's more of the challenges that we can have and that a lot of companies have, keeping things in order, keeping things legal, you know. So many changes have happened in the last several years with, you can't ask somebody their age anymore. You can't ask them, if they have kids. You can't ask them a lot of things. And now with the COVID-19 lockdown being kind of at its end is what it feels like. I mean, I think there's a lot of places in the country. I'm here in Texas, and it's like it never happened. I mean, just like that, highways were crowded. Everything was crazy. I mean, you go to Walmart and you're trying to keep social distancing, but it is happening all over the country. My guest today has been an HR professional for a lot of years. He has worked with some massive companies. I mean, little companies like Disney and some others, and he's consulted all over the country. He's writing articles to help HR people really have the right information at the right time. So I'm really honored. I'm really thrilled to bring information to you from Chuck Simikian. So Chuck, thank you so much for being on the show.
All right, Patrick, thrilled to be here. It's funny, and I know we were going to get into a little bit about my story, my history, but you talk about how things have changed. When I first started in my HR career out of college, and it was the mid to late 80s or so, I had started at Walt Disney World, and my HR career started in recruiting. And a lot of people don't realize back in those days, the pre-1990 days, you're a recruiter at Disney. We had height, weight guidelines. So
Nice.
I know people don't realize that. And someone would come in, they would interview, and they would, on their application, they would write their social security number, they would write their height, and they would write their weight. And I actually had a chart in my office, and we were all held accountable for this, that you had to be between a certain height and weight to be costumable. Didn't mean you could not work at Walt Disney World, but if you did, you would be in what they called behind the scenes if you were not within those guidelines. And probably the most embarrassing, challenging thing I ever had to deal with at that time was, and I'm just revealing this to the audience, and they may not know this, but in fact, most people don't, but we had a scale in the casting office, what they called Walt Disney World employment. And I'd have to walk people over. If I looked at them and looked at that number on those numbers on the paper, I would have to walk them over to the scale and weigh them and see how tall they were, and then tell them that whether or not where they could work. And it was challenging. So obviously we don't do that anymore. Anyone that came in, and this is back in the early, if you went to Walt Disney World in the late 80s, early 90s, you didn't see people in wheelchairs. You didn't see people in, with any type of disability. And how that has changed 30 years later to where Disney is really, and the Universal Studios here in Orlando, they celebrate diversity. They celebrate the opportunities to provide to individuals that have disabilities. And now you see people with service animals, you see people with visual disabilities, hearing disabilities. It's absolutely amazing how things have changed, and it's commonplace now. So
it's really good. And one of the things that I appreciate about what you just said is that it shows how you've grown kind of up in this business. You've gone through the different iterations of HR, and as we address this whole COVID-19, I would imagine that this COVID-19 thing has really thrown some real wrenches into our system, our way we lay people off and maybe rehire them. And I know that there's a lot of things you've been doing. So I'm real curious. What are you doing now to
Hmm.
really um, serve your clients the most?
Sure, sure. So the best thing that I'm doing is just trying to stay as relevant as possible, staying on top of any new trends, any new laws. Look, the Department of Labor, the EEOC, OSHA, they are coming out with guidance all of the time. Early on, there was no guidance. It was the Wild West. So everyone was trying to figure out what to do because in HR, Patrick, there's a guiding principle for a lot of these things is providing a good faith effort. And so you want to document what you're doing and you want to provide a good faith effort. In other words, do what you think is best based on what the law is, but have your resources. Make sure you have people that you can go to. I call it throwing lifelines. You have lifelines out there. So I was trying to be that lifeline for many colleagues, many clients, as much as possible, because if you're a normal HR manager, director, or VP, you are working on trying to maintain the sustainability of the business because your owners, your senior leaders are freaking out. No one knows what's going on. So your HR person is trying to keep all of that together. And so
Wow.
my role in that was to be able to provide the little bits and pieces of, hey, did you know? Were you aware? And because there's so much information overload, and I've written a few LinkedIn articles about that, just to kind of keep things clear and in perspective, and they've been really well received because it cuts through a lot of the clutter because there is so much out there.
What's an example of one of your articles for LinkedIn that you're talking about?
Sure. So well, you're talking about the HR folks. So it's funny. I just wrote an article and uploaded it last week. It was things that HR folks can do now to stay relevant, for example. So that was more of a general article geared specifically for the HR folks. And I talked about, and I actually have it right here. I just, stay educated, continue to lead, and be a visionary. In other words, stay educated, stay on top of things. That's number one. Don't be afraid of technology. Be the expert in your office. You and I talked a little early on about the challenges HR folks are finding right now, and they're having to juggle things outside of what you would call the normal HR world. When I first started, HR used to be smiles and files, and it's not smiles and files anymore. It's so much more. You have to know the business. You have to understand the business. I tell every HR person that I meet, especially as I teach seminars to newly minted HR folks, I say, number one, get out of your office, walk around, meet everyone. But number two, number two, learn how the business works. How do they make money? And number three, take a class on reading financial statements. You've
Mm,
got to understand how the business works. And once you understand how the business works, you become more valuable to the business. And they used to use the term seat at the table. Well, that's what HR is now. Your owners want answers, your employees want answers, your senior leaders are looking for guidance. And it's interesting how everyone, yeah, you always have your attorneys and maybe your financial people for the numbers, but everyone's looking to the HR folks to just pull it all together and to give that perspective. And the HR folks that are prepared, that have done those things, that have understand how the business works, and they're able to educate themselves and have those resources out there, like me, reading and anything that they can do, they are much more valuable and in a better place for their company.
absolutely. But one of the things that I've seen in industry around the country, because like you, I speak all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us have touched so many lives around the country. But one of the things that I find that is common is that most organizations don't have a dedicated HR
Right.
only person. They have a HR slash whatever? What are some of the other slashes that you would see when you're dealing with HR people, when you're working with your clients? What other responsibilities do they tack on to HR, and how do those people stay relevant and informed, along with get all that other junk done?
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, I am the receptionist. I am the storage, the the person that orders all the supplies.
Oh yeah.
I am the HR person. I am the recruiter. I handle the benefits. Oh, and by the way, I take care of the phones and I make sure the lunch is ordered for the weekly executive meetings. Those are the type of folks I see as HR. In fact, I got to applaud a lot of small companies because they're adding HR to the mix. And in the past, even if it's not a sole responsibility, at least people are realizing the importance and the value on the bottom line of at least having someone keep an eye on some of the HR things, even if it's the basic things of recruiting, making sure paperwork is filled out, and making sure the files are in great order. And so, but yeah, I see it all the time, Patrick. I teach seminars for I call it HR for newbies. I teach it all over the country, and I see people walking in, and I say, well, how many of you folks have been in HR for, less than a year? More than half the hands go up. Some of the people are told, hey, you need to go to this class right now because, by the way, we need an HR person, and we couldn't figure out who to make the HR person, so you're it.
Nice. They just throw it on there, and but the challenge is that I would imagine that some of these people are not trained to handle the kind of pressure, and many times I would imagine that they don't even have an awareness of what kind of problems they can create
Oh, absolutely.
in the position of HR, litigiously, and fees and things of that nature. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. When I start my newly minted, my HR for newbies class, I talk to folks about your number one job now. You might have been the receptionist. You might have been the supply clerk person. You might have been the person that dusted the lobby, watered the plants, put the coffee out, and did all that. But now that they've layered the HR on top of you, everything's changed. And your number one job is risk management, is to make sure, is to protect the company. And you can't gossip anymore. You can't, everything you say is being watched. And in fact, once people find out you're the HR person, they're going to be coming to you for answers. So you have got to know what you are saying, what you can say, and what you can't say. Plus, your folks are watching you, they're judging you. And if you lose that credibility in those early days, you're sunk. You'll just be able to process. Then you'll just be smiles and files, and that's it.
Right. Are there some tools? Are there some ways to get? I want to call it the shortcut. The are there some things that folks can do right now to make sure, as they come out of the COVID-19 lockdown, that they can make sure that they have the right information, that they're properly equipped, that they're not violating anything that would get them fined beyond reason, or anything else? I mean, what
Yeah.
if I was a newly hired or picked up the HR role because I could fog a mirror? No, I'm kidding. I was pretty good at what I could do, what I was doing, but they said, we need you to step into this role too. What could I do to make sure that I don't get myself and my company into a deep mess?
Sure. So surprisingly, a lot of the things out there that to get yourself up to speed. A number of them are free and available. Some, and it's just like taxes, Patrick. You know, you could do your taxes for free, right? Anyone could do their taxes for free. But if you want a little bit more, maybe you're going to pay, you know, for one of these programs, like not the, you know, tax programs. But then if you want to take everything off your hands, you're going to hire an accountant, right? So start with, you know, you're going to do some of your own HR, and you're going to start doing your own research. But first thing is you're going to want to subscribe and start going to the Department of Labor, like the DOL.gov, EEOC.gov. Subscribe to their newsletters, their press releases, the OSHA .gov site, ADA.gov, and there are surprisingly, it's in fact, it's almost overwhelming. There are webinars, there's Q&A, fact sheets, anything and everything you need. So I would start there. I would find partners. I would find, well, before a partner, then I would start networking. I would look for the local HR association of where I am living and working. Now,
is that like SHRM or
SHRM, right?
What's the other one?
I would join SHRM.
SHRM.
I would join SHRM here
So
in Orlando.
And then I know I would think, and maybe this is where you're going with partners, but I would think if I went to SHRM, I would try to find a mentor.
Right. Well, that's where I was going, is start networking with folks. You know, here in Orlando, so my background has, and I'm in Orlando, by the way, has been mainly theme parks and hospitality. So we actually have a hotel hospitality HR association here, which has been fantastic. We would have monthly meetings. We have an educational speaker come in. SHRM does the same thing, monthly meetings, educational speaker comes in, you learn something. But most importantly was I got to meet all the other hotel HR directors in town that were my colleagues. We established business friendships, personal friendships. We get to know each other. We get to understand the trends. And so you got to have these lifelines. So some of these folks are my lifelines. Hey, what are you doing? And granted, there's proprietary secrets and corporate secrets, and we all understand that. We're all very professional. But but when human resources are together, just like marketing folks, it's the love of the industry. In fact, I don't know if you could see this real quick. This is my little bud.
I was watching it, man. You told me about that. I was like, oh, that's his there. I love what?
Yeah.
HR?
I got that at a SHRM conference a couple years ago. So HR people understand that, and you start finding out, what are people doing? What are the trends? How are you handling this? You know, you do not have to go it alone. And then finally get a partner, find or a mentor or a consultant or someone that you can just double check things. You know, I just wrote a class, a little 15-minute class for another association, employers association, where they wanted a quick overview of I-9s, I-9 audit, doing an I-9 audit. Well, yeah, you could do your own I-9 audit, but wouldn't it be better to have someone come in and double check? Because the penalties on screwing up your I-9s can go from several $100s per incident to several $1,000s. So is it worth spending a couple $100s to have a second set of eyes? So, you know, you could hire a lawyer. Lawyers are expensive too, but you should have at least a go-to person. We tell people, Patrick, I tell them in class, there's something called reasonable basis. And if the Department of Labor comes in, the EEOC comes, and the wage and hour division of the Department of Labor, when they show up at your doorstep, they don't bring donuts. I don't know. I think people think they bring donuts and coffee and say, show us all your payroll records. They don't. They show up and they say, show us your payroll records. And you're going to be like, well, you know what? We have our employee lunch tomorrow, and we have this going on. Can I get back with you? No. We want to see this. We need to see it now. If you're lucky, you might get a letter ahead of time. But you've got to, they're going to ask when they look through your I-9s, the EOC or the ICE, they call it, the Immigration Control, or Department of Labor, all of these government agencies, they're going to ask you a couple of questions. And one of the main things they're going to know is, what did you do? And why did you think it was a good idea to do that? And if you say, oh, I just Googled it. Yeah, you know where we're going, right? Oh, I just Googled it, or and so
It
you
was
want to be
on
able to.
YouTube, man. I
It
mean,
was on
I
YouTube.
looked it on YouTube. I had to go down 3 different rabbit holes, sign up for 2 new newsletters, subscribe to 3 different channels. But I did find somebody that said, "Isn't that good
Right.
enough?"
Well, it could be part of your answer if you're able to legitimize that person. But you want to be able to say, okay, I went to a SHRM meeting. I saw a speaker. In my industry, this is a common practice. I had an HR consultant or an employment attorney look at this. You know, you never want to be able to say, well, that's how they did it before I got here, so I just kept it going. So you want to be able to provide what they call reasonable basis. So there's a couple of ingredients that go into that nice dough, so to speak.
Yeah. What's funny is, as I speak to folks that come to my workshops, and many times they're HR, and the ones that have been in it a few years, like 10 plus, they're the way that they think, the questions they ask, the insights they have, and add into what I'm even teaching about. You'd be amazed. I feel like I'm talking to an attorney.
Right.
And I think the more that I feel like the more, as we move forward, the more of the HR person's almost going to have some real understanding, deep understanding of law and litigation and process and all of that. But the new person that is working for a company with, maybe less than 100 people, it's going to be, a challenge. And thanks for sharing some of those ideas, Sherm,
Sure.
and get a mentor and maybe hire a consultant if that's needed. Now you consult and you work with clients around the country. What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing around the country for coming out of this lockdown? What are you trying to get your people to begin to really focus on
Sure.
right now?
Sure. So as I talk to my clients, I talk to colleagues, and Patrick, I teach. So another thing is there are a number of seminar companies out there. There's 2 that I can think of. One that's excellent that I currently contract with, and I teach these in those classes. Patrick, we're talking a 7-8 hour class for less than $100, $200. Sometimes there's annual memberships you can sign up for, and you can take these classes over and over. You can take a number of employment law, HR law, and sometimes they double down on just OSHA, for example, for a whole day of OSHA. So that's another thing I just wanted to throw out there. But when I talk to these folks, first of all, it's the challenge for your HR people in general right now is staying ahead of the curve. So you got to stay ahead of the game, and because they've been thrust to the forefront, and they've been thrust into these meetings where everyone's looking at them saying, what do you think we should do? Tell us about the Paycheck Protection Act. Well, that sounds like something accounting does. Oh, no, 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 no. No, we need you to tell us about the PPP. We need you to tell us about the EFMLA law. We need you to tell us, oh, yeah, I heard about that on the news the other day. No, you have got to be proactive. And I know when you and I had talked a little bit about some of the secrets to my success or the things that I do, but being proactive and passionately proactive is huge. You cannot wait until you get the question. You need to be able to anticipate, oh my gosh, there's this thing called the EFMLA. Oh, I don't watch the news. Well, you need to watch the news to know it's coming down the pike, right? So you need to be prepared because your boss is watching the news, and tomorrow he's going to ask you. You're lucky if he doesn't text you tonight, but tomorrow he's going to ask you those questions, and you've got to be prepared. You know, and I also wrote down something else here as I was just thinking, you know, juggling things once again outside of that HR normalcy. You know, I've dealt with layoff situations. It's not easy, but people weren't sure what to do. Do we lay people off? All of a sudden, people are talking about furlough. And that's in most private employers, they don't deal with furloughs. I mean, maybe you hear from government agencies, maybe large companies like GM, oh, we're furloughing these folks for 3 months. But most companies don't furlough. Well, what does that mean? And then people were starting to confuse those two terms. And do we just cut people, take them to 0 hours? Do we keep them active? Do we continue to pay for their benefits? Do we do it for 2 weeks, 2 months? So as opposed to the several other times that I've seen downturns in the economy, even after 2001 or in the late 2000s with the economy crashed, at least we had a definitive idea that, hey, it's going to be definitely months, maybe a year or two before we get back up on our feet. Like everyone kind of had an idea. With this current situation, it's changing every day. No one knows. I read an article the other day that top epidemiologists were saying we're looking at 1 to 2 years. If there's no vaccine, we're going to have peaks, we're going to have valleys. This is going to go on. So companies right now are just starting to come to terms with how much can I do with as small of a staff and just be ready to scale up. And so
Do you
that's the
find that,
challenges.
yeah, do you find that people are challenged with who to bring back and how quickly? And I mean, because a lot of people, I think they're thinking, okay, light switch, I'm here,
Yeah,
you know.
right. So, you know, if you wanted to be someone to be brought back, you needed to start preparing for that months or years ago. You know, I've laid off, been party to lay off. I've been on that side. I've luckily I've never been on the laid off side, but I've been on the other side where you're making these decisions and you're looking down a list of people and you have folks. All right, who can we bring back that can make us successful, that can take us to the next level? You know, who has the positive attitude, who has the skills, who's willing to do everything that we need to get done outside of their current realm. And you're looking at folks saying, you know, these folks, they're good at what they do, but they're not going to go much further outside of their lane. We need someone that could go the full breadth, right? Because we're doing less with more people. So
So wait a minute, wait a minute. What I'm hearing is that you're saying that they're going to bring back assets, not liabilities. Is that what you just
exactly.
said?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you may not be a liability, but you're not as great of an asset if it's between you and one other person. And that other person has proven to be, and usually I've seen it, Patrick, and it a lot of times it has to do with attitude. I've seen folks brought back that may not have all of the knowledge and the skills, but they have enough, but they have the right attitude, and they're the ones that are going to jump down and you know, scrub floors, you know, screw in light bulbs, in addition to crunch balance sheets, right? So they're willing to do everything, and those are the keys. Those really
Yeah,
are.
I totally get that. Now, obviously, you work with clients around the country, you speak around the country. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that, Chuck?
Oh, sure. So, well, I, my company is called Alliance HR Partners, but I did create a domain name, hrandsafetyhelp.com. It's very simple, hrandsafetyhelp.com. The safety is referring to safety and risk management. I have a partner that he and I work in tandem, so I can handle a lot of the HR employment law. He can handle the HR or the safety and risk management. So that is the best way to get hold of me, and that will divert you to my Alliance HR Partner site, and all the contact information's on there.
And so I wonder if they wanted that article on that's on LinkedIn, should they just reach out and connect to you, send you a connection request, and maybe reference, I'm really interested in your HR article. Would that be okay?
That would be
And
perfect.
Okay, and then
That
I'll
would be
put
perfect.
the spelling of your name in the description. Make sure that you're tagged on that. Folks, I hope you're getting you've gotten some value from just learning that, a lot of people just kind of dismiss HR because, like Chuck was saying, it used to be, what'd you call it, smiles and files?
Smiles and files.
Yeah, but now it's safety, in the sense of keep the business safe. If you want to keep your business safe, folks, I'd be reading what Chuck Simikian puts out. I'll be reaching to connect to him. I, and if you're needing a good some consultant, I would hire him, and to bring him in, and to help make sure that there are some real critical balls being dropped along the way. Chuck, is there anything else you'd like to add as final words of today's podcast?
No, I tell folks when I teach classes and when I talk to clients, I say, look, you could do whatever you want. It just matters how comfortable you are at being exposed. Maybe you want to be, and you probably can't see this, but this is exposure, right? Whoa, I'm fully exposed. And so you want to start putting things in place, mitigating so that you can close that gap. You may not be airtight, but you can close that gap. And a lot of times I run into HR folks that are saying, well, my owner won't let me do that, or my owner doesn't believe in that. Well, then your owner can be as exposed as they want. So that's my final message in regards to that.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Chuck. Thanks for being on the show today. And folks, this is Pat Dewar, strength-based marketing, really trying to help businesses relaunch out of this COVID-19, the lockdown that we've been in. And there's lots of companies that I know are hurting in a lot of ways. There's a lot of stress. And I just want to give some ideas to help you guys make sure that when we reemerge, we reemerge stronger, better, and more profitable than ever before. Thank you so much, folks, for being on the air today. Watch the show, and wherever you catch it, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube or anything else. And Chuck, thanks again for being
Awesome.
on.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick.